Story time. I was the toxic best friend. So a little background information. I was 16 and a sophomore in high school. And at the beginning of the year, I met this girl who we're going to call Riley. Riley and I hit it off straight away. Like a week after knowing each other, she knew everything about me and I knew everything about her. Well, then she tells me about this guy that she's talking to, who we're going to call Jay. She said that they would hook up sometimes and he would text her sometimes. But she said that I couldn't tell anybody because he said that it had to be a secret. So I tried telling her that he sounded like a fuckboy, but she decided she was going to do whatever she wanted. And I was like, okay. So fast forward to the end of the year, he adds me on Snapchat. Okay, don't get me wrong. He was really hot, but I had my own thing going on. So I really didn't pay that much attention to him. And I thought he maybe added me on Snapchat to be like, oh my God, I really like your best friend. And then I also was caught between a rock and a hard place. Do I tell my best friend that the guy that she likes just added me on Snapchat? Or do I lie to her? Well, I was going to tell her until I got a Snapchat from him, like for part 2. Part 2 about how I was the toxic best friend. So like I said, I didn't know whether I should tell her that he added me on Snapchat or if I should. And I was going to until I got a Snapchat from him saying, hey, you're really pretty. I think we should talk sometime. So I ended up telling her about it because I felt really bad. And she was like, this is why I can't trust girls. Like, you need to unadd him right now. Like, fucking block him. And I'm like, I didn't even do anything. Like, what the fuck? So whatever. I end up blocking him. It's fine. Until he texts me one day. And he's like, hey, it's Jay. I think you blocked me on Snapchat, LOL. And him and I had talked a little bit in school and I kind of started to like him. Well, fast forward, him and I ended up hooking up a few times. We were talking a lot. And he hadn't been texting Riley as much. Well, the one night while I was sleeping over at her house, my phone was going off a lot. And I didn't think to delete any of the messages, like for part 3. Part 3 about how I was the toxic best friend. So like I said, I was sleeping over her house the one night. My phone was blowing up and she knows my password and everything. And I stupidly did not delete the text messages between Jay and I. And I kid you not, I wake up to a slap across the face. It felt like she slapped me with her fist. And it looked like it too because I had a black eye. So I woke up and she's like, what the fuck? Like, I hate you so much. Like, why would you do this? And I look down and she has my phone right in her hand on the text messages with Jay. And I ended up feeling really bad because she started crying, saying that, like, I knew that she liked him a lot. And I also knew the reason why he wasn't texting her as much. Well, then she ran downstairs and she told her mom. And the next thing I know, I had her mom, and her 3 other sisters screaming at me. And then I got blocked by Jay because she wasn't supposed to know and she leaked his nudes.
Story time of the trio that killed their victims and fed them to their neighbors. 2 women and 1 man who were in a love triangle would lure young women to their house by offering them work as a nanny. A lot of these women who were in search for work trying to get the little money would accept the offer and go to the trio's home. They expected there to be a child whom they would get introduced to take care of, but baby, were they wrong. When they were in the trio's home, a man would attack them and kill them with a hammer and then cut them up into pieces. After they were done with the murders, one of the women would use the remains of the human flesh and make traditional stuffed meat pastries. Then they would go out on the street corners and sell those meat pastries to people in their community. Motherfuckers was eating their own friends. They didn't feed all of their victims to their neighbors. Sometimes they would eat their victims themselves for lunch or dinner. They claimed human meat was no different than beef. It tasted the same and had the same consistency. So it's like, why should I spend my money on beef if I could just kill somebody and eat them? One of the victims was a 17-year-old mother to an 18-month-old baby. They killed and butchered the mother right in front of the 18-month-old baby. And the next day, they fed the baby pieces of her mother for lunch in a pastry. That way, the baby would never know she was eating her own mother. What they did next to the baby was even worse. Part 2 of the trio that killed their victims and fed them to their neighbors. After the trio had killed a 17-year-old mother in front of her 18-month-old baby, then fed the remains of the mother in pastry form to the 18-month-old baby, they took the baby in and raised it as their own. Thankfully, their whole scheme ended when one of the women tried to use a credit card that belonged to one of the victims who was reporting missing near their home. Like, how dumb can you possibly be? When they searched their home, they dug up their garden and found 2 bodies of a 20-year-old and a 30-year-old woman. When all the news came out about how people in the community had eaten their own neighbors' remains inside these pastries that they had bought from the trio, so many people were upset. Upset ain't even the word. But the man in the trio's brother claimed that he couldn't have done this to the women because his brother was a vegetarian. But eventually, the man and the 2 women in the trio confessed to their crimes. They said they did what they did because they claimed the women they killed would eventually give birth to thieves and lowlives and claimed they were controlling the population. The man and 1 woman in the trio were sentenced 71 years in prison and the other woman was sentenced 68 years. And a shocking discovery, the police chief in charge of the investigation discovered that he himself had eaten the murdered women's flesh.